Hello all and welcome to my rover testing world. Today we're going to be taking a look at everything you need to know in order to build good rovers and space engineers. We'll start by going over all the blocks you'll want to consider, and then we'll come back outside and design a rover from scratch so that you can get a feel for my thought process while building. I have loads of tips to give along the way, so even if you've been playing the game for a while, you'll probably learn something new. Alright, here we are inside where we've got a tutorial board that kind of goes over everything I consider when building a rover. We're going to just start at the beginning and go through each block in detail as we go. So the first set of blocks, I guess, are things that are absolutely essential on rovers, and that is some sort of control block, power, wheel suspensions, and in my opinion, a gyroscope. For control blocks, I personally like using cockpits because they're a good option on any planet or moon. So if you have no atmosphere, you're in a cockpit, you can get oxygen or whatever from your ship. If you're on Earth, that's kind of the only time I recommend using the rover cockpit. Maybe on Pertam if you are in a breathable atmosphere area, but pretty much only on Earth. These things are cool, but they're not entirely practical. The next thing you're going to need is power production of some sort or power storage. Pretty much regardless, I would recommend having batteries. Even if you have power production on your rover, I recommend having batteries. They're going to let you last longer, and if you happen to run out of ice or hydrogen, or the sun is down if you're using solar, your batteries are just going to let you operate in conditions more consistently. Hydrogen engine combined with the H2O2 generator are something I consider extremely good for rovers. They let you recharge without sunlight, without being around a base. All you need is a little bit of ice, and you can use the engine to recharge your batteries, or you can just use the engine to power your rover. It's the one thing in the game that hydrogen engines are really good for, is powering rovers, because they don't output a lot of power, so it's really hard to fly with hydrogen engines. But for driving rovers, it's a great option. So I highly recommend using a hydrogen engine and H2O2 generator in combination with each other. One H2O2 generator will output enough hydrogen to fuel two hydrogen generators. So keep that in mind. You don't have to have one of these for every one of those, just one for two of those. And one or two of these is going to be all you ever need unless you're building an absolutely massive rover. So keep that in mind. Wheel suspensions, you're definitely going to need these. That's kind of like the whole premise of a rover. You need wheels, but you should note that there is a left and a right version of all of the wheel suspensions, and you should try to use them on the proper side. Otherwise, you're going to have to go into your control panel and you're going to have to invert the steering and the thrust override or whatever. It's going to be kind of a headache. Just use them on the right side. The other thing is, for the vanilla suspensions, they're kind of shaped like a boot, and you want to have the toe of the boot facing downwards. Otherwise, your wheel's going to be at the top. It's just upside down if you do it the other way. If you have the DLC ones, you want the yellow horseshoe on top. And if you're looking at it from the top, it's got a red ring around the speaker looking thing. The bottom doesn't have that. So another thing to note about these is their hitboxes are not as big as they are. So you should really use this fact to stick the suspensions underneath your vehicles. You don't really want the suspensions sticking out from your vehicles, because then you're just ending up with a really wide wheelbase and the center of your rover is likely to bottom out. This just lets you hide them really nicely in most cases, so I definitely recommend doing this if you can. Just hide them underneath. The last thing that I think should be considered essential, but technically isn't, is the gyroscope. Gyroscopes let you control your rover anytime you're airborne or on ice, which happens fairly often. So it'll keep you from crashing. And if you roll over, a lot of times you can use the gyroscopes to right your rover. In order to do that though, I really recommend putting all of your gyroscopes, just mount them all in the same orientation. They don't have to be upside right. This gyroscope we're looking at right here is upside right and facing us. So if you want to put them perfectly placed, you can place them all like that. But if you just place them all in the same orientation, then you can use the override controls as a group, and you can get a lot more torque out of your rovers doing that than just by moving your mouse around. So something to take note of. I definitely recommend having gyroscopes on every single rover, they're extremely useful. So you'll want them for sure. Moving on from essential blocks, we've got blocks that I think are nice and ones that I think you should definitely consider using. First of all, having decoy blocks. If you're playing in any sort of survival game where you have weather, you're probably going to want decoy blocks. They take priority for lightning, so when lightning strikes and you have a decoy block, it'll hit the decoy block instead of hitting any of your other blocks. So they're going to save you there for sure. I don't know actually how useful they are against gunfire, but they're great against lightning, and that's really the main reason I recommend them. Having headlights or just area surround lights for your rover, I like to have both of those. When it's night, especially if you have mods and ones that make the sky really dark, you're definitely going to want to have headlights for a rover. It's something I always overlook when I first build a rover, and I'm like, oh yeah, my lights. The first time it's nighttime, I want lights. The next thing I always have of some sort is either a beacon or an antenna. I usually do both because the antenna I can use for remote controlling, and the beacon just takes less power. So I will leave the beacon on and I'll just have it be long range, and then when I want to remote control, I can toggle to the antenna. So something to consider. Maybe use both, maybe use one or the other, whatever you prefer. Something else that has a lot of utility is having pistons on your rover that just lift your rover up vertically. A lot of times that's really useful because if you lose a tire or the bottom of your rover gets damaged, you can't get underneath it, and that's really annoying. But if you have like some pistons set up that just lift your rover, then you can reattach a wheel that exploded. You can work on the bottom of your rover, and it's just super nice. They can also be used to lift your rover into place so that you can attach with like a connector or something to a base. If you have a connector on top or on the back or even on the side of your rover, you just drive into place and lift your rover up to the right height, and then you can connect. So it's something I put on almost all my rovers, and it helps a ton. The last group in this category to consider is having parachutes and minimum flight capabilities, so adding thrusters to your rover. I don't think turning it into a ship that primarily flies is necessary, but I think being able to just limp, like just barely be able to fly, is super useful for a rover, because there's a ton of situations that you can get in where you just need to fly. If you could just fly a little bit, if you could just fly to the top of the cliff, if you just fly out of the giant ravine you fell into, it's going to save you tons of time and massive headaches, and it might just straight up save your rover. So I like to give my rover minimum flight capabilities, and even if I'm not doing that, I do still consider putting parachutes on my rovers, because if you're driving around somewhere like on Pertam where there's kilometer deep ravines that you may or may not see coming, being able to just pop open some parachutes will keep you from flying off the edge and exploding dramatically at the bottom. So you can at least recover your rovers. The parachutes, the hatches themselves, it doesn't really matter where you place them. They can be placed in any orientation and completely surrounded by blocks. They will still function just fine and deploy your parachutes through your blocks. So just place them wherever you can attach them. They have an attachment at the back of them or bottom of them, however you want to think of it. And that will let them reload parachutes without you having to do it manually. So definitely worth considering those two, but they are not necessary by any means. And they're not something I put on all my rovers. They're something I put on some of my rovers. The ones that I plan on driving around Pertam or like scout rovers, where you don't know where you're headed but you want to drive at full speed, I definitely recommend having this capability on those types of rovers. Next, we've got some advanced things to consider for your rover. I always like adding at least one remote control and camera. I make the remote control it in reverse, and I put the camera on the backside. That way I can reverse my rover as if I was going forwards, and it's really easy to drive and convenient. I love doing it. I recommend doing that for at least going in reverse. Sometimes I do it for forwards too. If I'm going to remote control my rover, I will have a forwards facing and a forwards facing camera as well. The next thing here is setting up a repair projector. If you're not familiar, it's basically just a projector that has a blueprint of the grid it's on, and the blueprint is set to just overlap the grid. So whenever something breaks, it'll automatically project that thing that broke, and you don't have to go replace the block and reorientate it and everything else. It saves a lot of time, and rovers tend to break small parts very often. Like you might bust a bumper or a block here or there. It happens all the time. So having an easy way to repair it without any headaches is definitely worth considering, at least on a Rover. The last thing here is just my basic survival kit setup. I play in survival all the time with forced respawn, so my survival kit setup so that I can respawn at my ship or somewhere else is always a survival kit, a timer block, and usually a button just for easy use. All the button does is turn on and off the survival kit, but the timer is set to about 90 seconds, and what the timer does is it starts itself again, and it turns the survival kit back on. So I can kill myself, push backspace, respawn somewhere else, and this survival kit will turn back on after a certain amount of time, and I can respawn back at the ship if I want to. And that pretty much covers all of the individual blocks and block groups that you might want to consider having. There are some other things that everyone should consider when building a rover, and that mostly has to do with durability. And the way you get more durability is by having more durable blocks and by also designing your rover so basically it tips less, because most of the damage you take when you're driving a rover around is from rolling your rover, not being upside right. So in order to do that, I definitely recommend having larger tires. The larger the better usually. There are no flat roads in Space Engineers, so when you're driving your rover around, you're probably going to want it to look more like an off-road vehicle, like an ATV or a monster truck or something. So generally speaking, the larger wheels are better. They're individually, the block themselves is more durable, and they give you more ground clearance, so you can have a wider wheelbase and not be bottoming out all the time. I recommend using bigger wheels whenever you have the opportunity. Even if it seems a little bit unreasonable, it's probably okay. So, another thing I always recommend having is bumpers of some sort, and the best block to use for bumpers is the blast door blocks. They are more durable than heavy armor blocks, this purple block over here. They're more durable, and they only take steel plate, so they don't actually take the metal grids. So definitely worth considering. They're almost indestructible. Unless you fall from a mile and land directly on a single one of these blocks, you can hit things at full speed with these blocks, and a lot of times these won't even break. You'll make a dent in the terrain and you'll kind of bounce off of it. So definitely build bumpers, at least on the front and back of your rover. I actually use these on the sides and sometimes on the roof as well. So if I roll, I have very durable blocks that will take the brunt of the damage. Another thing worth knowing about these is they don't attach to blocks on two of their sides. And if they're not directly attached to a block, they will not transfer impact damage to that block. So if I have a cockpit or something, I can put it directly below some like bumper blocks, and if I roll my ship over, I can transfer the damage away from the cockpit and to some other heavy armor blocks or something that are not attached to it. And it just makes it so that you can dissipate damage kind of nicely. So they're a very useful block. Another thing to consider with regard to block type choices, I pretty much recommend using heavy armor for everything on your rovers. If you're building armor blocks, you should probably be using heavy armor blocks. They're more durable, and yes, they're heavier, but weight isn't really an issue for a rover because you're sitting on the ground. So definitely use heavy armor blocks. The last major thing I like to consider is, again, about weight distribution, and it's block placement for heavy blocks. Every block in Space Engineers has a mass that goes along with it, and some of them have a lot more mass than others, so they're going to offset the weight distribution of your rover significantly. These blocks right here are the blocks with the most mass. They are power blocks, generally, all the power blocks, gyroscopes, and thrusters, and of course your artificial mass blocks, which pretty much you're never going to use unless you're trying to drive a rover around in space where you have artificial gravity. Then you'd use things like this to keep them on a surface, but yeah, otherwise you're never going to use those. So what you want to do with these blocks is you want to place them as low to the ground as possible without being somewhere where they're going to bottom out. but as low to the ground as possible and as centered in your wheelbase as possible. So you don't want to put these blocks in front of your front wheels or behind your back wheels. You want to put them in between, and you don't want to put them to the right of your right wheels or to the left of your left wheels. You want them in between your wheels, centered as much as possible and as low as possible. And that will center your center of mass, which is what you rotate about in Space Engineers. So when you corner, you want your center of mass really low and in the center of your car so that you don't just flip sideways. But this is one of those things that I think a lot of people either don't know or they just ignore it because they're like, I don't have the time of day to think about this, but it will make a significant difference in your cornering ability and just your tendency to land upright. If your center of mass is low and close to your wheels, you're likely to bounce off your wheels and end up upside right instead of upside down. So it's definitely worth considering. All right, now that we've gone through all the blocks, let's go and actually build a rover and go through the designing process firsthand. Usually what I start with is a landing gear, and there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, it gives you a stable base to build off of, and second of all, it shows you which direction is facing forwards. The first block you place determines your grid's rotation axes. So if you place a landing gear, it has a very clear rotation axis that is the toe of the boot faces forwards and the bottom faces down. So I'm going to build my rover off of a landing gear, and that only kind of matters for projectors. I can't think of what else really that matters for, but now if I have a projector projecting my rover in the future, I will know that the front of my rover is facing forwards on the projector. So if I put my projector facing forwards, it will immediately project my rover facing forwards. It's not a necessary thing, but it's certainly a convenient thing to get in the habit of doing. When I'm building ships, I will often start with a cockpit for the same reason. It has a very clear forwards, backwards, up and down. But when I'm building on the surface, I will almost always start with a landing gear because it will attach and it will do the same thing. Now from this landing gear, I'm going to build up at least 2 blocks. I recommend doing 3, but 2 is the bare minimum, and that is because if you add your large wheels to blocks that are only 1 high, they will not add the wheel, they'll just add the suspension. So if you go too high, that is just barely high enough to place the wheel and the suspension when you place the suspension. Now, if you go a little bit higher than that, it has the added benefit of when you place your wheels, if you choose to place big wheels, you can now walk underneath them. So you will be able to work on the bottom of your rover while you're building it. And you can crouch if you want it to be a little bit easier, but you'll be able to go underneath your entire rover. And then from there, what I'll usually do is I will build out in the forwards and backwards direction a solid line of usually heavy armor blocks, but just armor blocks of some sort. And then at this point, I want to figure out what I want my rover to do. Now this is probably way overkill, so I'll just shorten this up right away. You don't have to make a giant T, just something, something to support your functional blocks. Now, for this example rover, I think I'll go with something a little more simple. I am going to use a cockpit, but I'm just going to build a rover that is convenient to drive around and do some scouting for me. Not something that's overly huge, but something that is going to be durable and easy to drive on rough terrain. So I am going to want a cockpit because I want this to be able to work on the moon, anywhere. I don't want to have to build different rovers. So I'm going to build an all-purpose rover that works anywhere, and having a cockpit is a great way to do that because I can then add an H2O2 generator right behind it, and now I have a way of getting oxygen to myself no matter where I am, oxygen or hydrogen to refuel my jetpack. So from this point, I guess I have to decide, do I want storage on my rover? Do I want respawn point on my rover? Nowadays, I pretty much always want a respawn point on my rover, so I'm going to definitely add that. That makes things a little bit difficult in the sense that if I want to add a connector or something, I am not going to be able to add a connector now to this end, the back side, which is where I'd like to put one because I have these small things. And I want to be able to put large things in and out of this. And I need to put large things in and out of my hydrogen H2O2 generator because tanks are considered large. And I'm not going to be able to pass tanks in from my seat because it only has a large connector on the bottom. So I want large connectors going out a ways. And I think my way I'm going to resolve this is I'm going to use a cargo container here. So I will use a medium cargo container because it's a convenient size. And now I will use, let's see. Yeah, we'll do the survival kit right away. Maybe actually I'll go like this. Maybe I'll do side connectors. I never build side connectors, so this will be a new experience for me, but I think it's going to be a good one. So I will do side connectors. So on one of these I will have, actually, you know what, on both sides. We'll do connectors on both sides. We'll put one there and we'll put one here. And then behind this we will put the survival kit. And we will attach that. So now I have large connections through my survival kit, my cargo, and all the way to my H2O2 generator, so I will be able to put my tanks in conveniently. The next thing I need to consider probably is power. I really want to have a battery. And I think I'm going to, because this is a heavy block, so now this is one I really want to consider having centered on my ship, or centered on my rover, and low to the ground. I don't want to really put this on top, because that's going to make me a little bit top heavy. So I'm going to put this right on the side here, and it's going to be a little bit asymmetrical, because I'm not going to put one directly on the other side. On the other side, I'm going to put power production. And this actually is very convenient because I can hook up my hydrogen engine right there. And now my hydrogen engine can power my wheels or my battery, and my battery can power my wheels if I don't have enough power coming from the hydrogen engine. So, and that kind of balances the center of mass of my ship. Something I recommend doing pretty much whenever you're building a rover is going into your rover as soon as you can and checking this box in the info options to show your center of mass. So right now it's kind of faint, but you can see it right there. That's where the center of mass of my rover is, of the main body of my rover. Now you'll get a bunch of these little things showing up as soon as you put wheels on, because the wheels themselves are technically a different grid, so you'll get the center mass of all those. So you might want to turn it off if that gets annoying for you, but it's actually very useful to have because it will show you how balanced you are, and you want to remain as balanced as possible so that driving is fairly uniform. Alright, so now that I have that, I have power, I have storage, I have a way to connect. I think at this point, because I have most of my larger blocks placed, certainly there's a bunch of other things to add like gyros and whatnot, but I have most of my large blocks, the main body of my rover placed. Now is when I would consider placing my wheels. And because this rover has gotten, it's a little bit long, it's a little, you know, it's kind of wide. It's not a massive rover, right? But it's not a tiny rover. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the big wheels for this. Now, you have to remember, again, with placing wheel suspensions, they have a left and a right. So I always put them on my hotbar with the left wheel suspensions on the left side of my hotbar and the right ones on the right. That way I don't have to look at them again. But it does show in the bar up here whether it's left or right. So make sure you're placing your left ones on the left And now I place these wheels because I don't have a very wide rover. I'm going to place the wheels directly on this central beam. The central beam is going to be what supports my wheels. And that lets me kind of hide some of the suspension underneath, and it gets my wheels closer to each other. It's going to look silly at first, but as we fill out the rest of the inside of the Rover, it's going to look a lot less silly, I think. We have the room to build the large wheels, and we're just going to go ahead and do it. And it's going to look like a ridiculous monster truck, but it's going to function extremely well. So that's really what matters. It's going to be really durable, and it's going to work really well. So we're going to focus on that. All right, see, now you can see the center of mass of the wheel themselves. And something to kind of keep track of and to kind of gauge how stable your Rover is going to be, you can kind of see the center of mass of my main body of the Rover right there right now. What I like to look at is the triangle that the front wheels make with the center mass of the main part of the grid. And you want that to be a very squat triangle. So you want it to be wide across the bottom and then not go very tall in the middle. And the more squat you can make that triangle, the more stable your Rover is going to be. So maybe leaving these on all the time isn't the worst thing. You can kind of keep track of that. If your center of mass starts going up, 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 if you end up with a tall triangle, that's bad. You have a very unstable Rover. It's not ideal. Another thing is you want to try to keep your center of mass from the front back perspective. You want to try and keep it right in the middle as well. You don't want to end up being like front heavy or back heavy. So you can kind of just keep track of that and make sure you're doing a decent job of maintaining a center of mass. Something else to note, again, with the wheels, I am placing these wheels very far to the front. In fact, the wheel itself is the furthest thing forwards, and I definitely recommend having that type of setup, both on the front and the back of your vehicle. That way, if you run up to a wall or a steep cliff, the first thing that hits that cliff or that wall is going to be the wheels. And the wheels are extremely durable. You will most likely, if you hit with the wheels first, you will just start going up it, or you will bounce off of it and take zero damage. So if the furthest thing forwards is wheels, you are going to be significantly more durable. So I definitely recommend doing that, and the same in the back as well. And we don't have quite enough space to achieve that, so I'm going to go ahead and give us a little more space on the back to plant a wheel right there. Now, another thing I recommend with wheels is the more the merrier. So if you have room in the middle between the first wheels you place, to place another wheel, I definitely recommend you doing it. Now you have wheels that will bear the weight in the middle of your vehicle. These will also hold up the middle of your vehicle if you are going over bumpy terrain, and it will keep the middle of your vehicle from bottoming out. So yeah, more wheels is generally better. And I recommend you putting as many as you think is reasonable. You probably shouldn't be building a Rover that's so massive that you need hundreds of wheels, but 6 wheels is better than 4 for sure. So I recommend doing something like this if you're going to have a lot of wheels. And now you can kind of see that it's starting to make a little bit more sense. It looks kind of ridiculous like a monster truck, but it has a good wheelbase, a very stable wheelbase. It's not extremely long this direction. It's not wider than it is long. If you have a wheelbase that's wider than it is long, it makes you turn really sharp corners, and you would think it makes you more stable, but it actually makes you tip more, in my experience, and it makes it harder to control your vehicle. Another thing that should be considered for controlling your vehicle is if you make only the front wheels steer and only the back wheels brake, it will keep you from tipping as well. And that's because having only the front wheels steer will make you take corners less sharply. It's the same concept that applies in real life. It's why cars only generally have front wheel steering. It's because if you have all the wheels steering, you can corner extremely sharply, and you can pretty much always corner sharp enough that you can flip your vehicle very easily. So I'm going to go through, this is what I call the wiggle test. Basically, I just push left and right, and I see which wheels wiggle. And then I go into my thing here, and I want to make the wheels that I think are the back ones not steer. And then I do the wiggle test again, and I guessed right that time. Usually if you just remember which order you place them in, and place your front wheels first, then the lowest numbers on the wheel suspensions are your front wheels. I kind of do that to make the wiggle test a little bit easier. So like 4 and no name, or 1, are my steering wheels. So I'm going to click on those because I know that they are my frontmost wheels, and I'm going to remove the brake from them. Removing the brake from them keeps you from tipping over forwards when you slam on your brakes. You're pretty much always going to be going forwards, and you're going to be going forwards faster than you're going backwards in these vehicles. So when you're going forwards and you have to slam on the brakes, if your front wheels brake and they have a lot of traction, you can flip your vehicle over the front of your wheels. And that's super annoying. So the easy way to solve that and just not make it happen is to just not make those brake. Make only the back ones brake. And if you have multiple back wheels, then you have plenty of traction to brake quickly, and you're not really losing braking speed by making the front ones not brake. So you're just keeping yourself from flipping. And having the back wheels not steer, we already went over that. It's just to keep you from turning too fast. It's to keep you from making user errors that can flip your vehicle, because you absolutely will make them if you aren't just safeguarded against them to begin with. So usually right after the wheels, I go ahead and I put bumpers on my vehicle. And it's okay if your bumpers stick out as far as your wheels. I know I kind of said you want your wheels to stick out further than anything else, but bumpers aren't bad. They're kind of my exception. I will slap some blocks on, and then I will use these blocks right here to make a nice bumper on either side. And we'll just make it look decent. There we go. So this is going to be my back bumper. And now I could have placed this lower. I could have placed this on like this block, because technically that's the lowest block that could potentially bottom out. But I've found if I place a bumper here, that bumper will bottom out fairly often when I'm hitting like a hill or just like sharply changing terrain. It will bottom out in a lot of times, in a lot of situations where if it wasn't there, I wouldn't bottom out at all. Because while a block that's right where this is might bottom out, if that's not there, my wheels have a chance to do all the lifting and keep this block right here from bottoming out. So just because this block bottoms out doesn't mean this block is going to bottom out. So that's why I put my front and back bumpers a little bit higher. These bumpers are for running into like sheer cliffs, trees, things like that. Other grids, that's what these bumpers here are going to help with. And I usually make them as wide as my core blocks down the middle of my ship. Maybe a little bit less wide. It doesn't have to be all the way out to where the block I'm holding is, but it could be, and that wouldn't be a bad thing. This is never going to get in the way of this tire, because this tire is not going to turn. So if I decided to put it out this far, that would be fine. I'm not going to, because I like it there better. So I'll go up front and I will make the same type of thing. Usually I'll have blocks right behind my bumpers, and I will have them not attaching to the wheel suspensions, because that can transfer damage from the bumper to this block straight to the wheel suspension. Whereas if I have it like this, it will transfer the damage over to this block instead of the wheel suspension, which will save my wheel suspension from breaking. So it's a more important block than just an armor block. So we will prioritize keeping it safe. Though wheel suspensions are honestly extremely durable, so it's not something you really need to be worrying about protecting. So let's make the front one wider, just for the sake of doing it, because it's not going to really hurt anything. Make our front bumper nice and wide, because that is the direction we are going to be traveling. Let's do a quick wiggle test though on that bumper. Yeah, so I'm seeing the wheel go underneath the bumper, which means if the wheel is depressed a little bit, if it's pressed up into the wheel well, it might, and I'm doing a full turn, it might actually hit the bumper, and if wheels run into blocks, they can get caught on the blocks and stop turning. And if I'm cornering and my wheel gets stuck and stops turning, it's just going to grab the earth and I'm going to go flying. I'm going to go flipping over that wheel. So you don't want to obstruct the wheel at all with any of your blocks. Something to keep in mind as well. Alright, so we've got bumpers now. I think we should think about placing gyroscopes because they are one of the most critical components of a build like this. I recommend placing gyros all orientated the same way, but not all attached to the same block. So I wouldn't want to put a gyroscope there and a gyroscope there, because if this block breaks, now all my gyros are gone. I don't really want to put a gyroscope there and a gyroscope over here because they're not orientated the same way, so that's not ideal either. Now what I can do, because this is actually the lowest area of my rover, I could now get rid of some of these blocks in here. This is my lowest. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a nice 2-high beam across here because we are using the tall tires, but I'm just going to fast forward through that. Alright, we have now placed a more shapely bottom bar. Basically what I did is I just placed thinner blocks so that this is a little bit higher off the ground between the wheels, and then full blocks where the wheels attach so that the armor blocks hopefully bottom out at the same time or before these blocks bottom out, the wheel suspensions, so that I can try and keep them from getting really damaged. So it looks nicer. I think it's more interesting to look at. So oftentimes I will do this kind of setup underneath my vehicle. You want it to be as high as possible without making important blocks be lower than it. Alright, back to building gyroscopes, which is what we were supposed to be doing. For a vehicle that's about this size, 2 gyroscopes is probably fine. You don't need tons of gyroscopes, you just need enough to maneuver just a little bit while you're in the air, just enough to keep you to landing with your wheels on the ground. I like to go a little bit overkill with the gyros, but like 1 would probably be acceptable, 2 is better, and 3 or 4 is way more than enough. So I'm actually going to put them close to the wheels. I'm not going to put them right in the middle here because that area is a little bit more likely to bottom out than these areas, and I'm not going to put them right next to each other because if I lose all my gyros from a crash, then I have no gyros. So we're going to put some there, and then we're going to actually go ahead and we're going to put 2 more gyros. We're going to have a lot of gyros on this, and these are really low to the ground, so yeah, they're in kind of a dangerous spot, but I have a lot of them. They're spread out. They're not all likely to blow up at the same time, even if they do blow up, and they're all perfectly centered. Gosh dang it. They're all perfectly centered on my vehicle, and they're as low to the ground as physically possible. So, keeping my center of mass centered and low. Now I'm going to put back armor blocks here. Armor blocks are also fairly heavy, so having centered armor blocks like this is also helping me keep my center of balance low and in the middle of my rover. I think the next thing I want with this is to consider whether or not, now I've put the wheels on and everything, is this really a useful location for a connector? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, our plans have changed somewhere along the way, and this was a good idea to start, but now it's just not functional. Our connector is just not going to be useful there. So I'm going to just remove these center blocks. The nice thing about this type of setup where you have at least a single bar up the middle of your ship I can just remove these functional blocks and I can rearrange them without worrying about cutting my ship in half. Having a single line of contiguous armor blocks that touch all of the important blocks is really nice for that reason. And also, if one of these blows up due to a crash or an accident, then you're not gonna snap your rover in half. There is a bit of a weak point now where I have these gyroscopes, but I'm definitely going to address that in a little bit. What I'll probably do is I'll add another layer of heavy armor blocks right across here. And that will attach to the sides of these wheel suspensions, and that will kind of bridge the gap. So I have 3 blocks wide. I have the bottom block and then one on each side that will be attaching the front and the back of my ship in a continuous fashion. So the way I'm going to resolve this issue with my connectors is, instead of having a side connector, I'm going to go with a top connector. And I'm going to set that up that way. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this connector on right away. This actually wouldn't be a bad place to put a turret too, but I think I'm going to go with a connector. You know what, we'll do both. We'll do a connector and a turret, because we are making kind of a more elaborate vehicle. We will do both. And now I'm seeing that maybe I might want to have more power reserves. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a battery and another hydrogen engine, because this one H2O2 generator is enough to power 2. So we'll just go ahead and we'll make 2. And I'm going to make sure that this weight is as centered over these wheels as possible. In order to do that, I'm going to put the engines, I'm just going to use mirroring for a second. It really doesn't change anything. You can do all this stuff in survival, but this just makes it faster for me right now. So I'm going to put an engine on either side, and then I'm going to switch to my batteries, and I'm going to put a battery on either side, just like that. So now I have 2 batteries and 2 engines. The engines are not currently hooked up, so you're going to make sure that the engines are hooked up. We will just use the generic small grid connectors here. You could use fancy ones, but we don't have to. So once again, these heavy blocks are centered as much as I can on the rover, and they are low to the ground. Alright, what is the next thing I want? What is the next thing I want? I kind of want a turret now. I kind of want a turret on this. And I'm going to put it on top so that I can kind of aim anywhere, but I don't want it directly on these vital interior blocks, because in the past I have done that, and I know that that is a great way to cause these middle blocks to blow up if you roll over, because the turret's going to stick out more than anything else. The turret is pretty much guaranteed going to get damaged if you roll. And if the turret is directly on one of these blocks, it's going to transfer any additional damage through to these blocks, which you really don't want. So I'm going to do the smart thing instead, and I'm going to put a row of armor blocks. Now, I could use heavy armor blocks, but they're going to be between things. They're not going to be running into anything, and they're kind of high up on my rover. They're not on the bottom of my rover. So I'm actually going to use light armor blocks here, because they will still act as a cushion between the other blocks, but they're not going to be heavy. They're not going to raise my center of mass, hardly at all. Alright, so we'll take light armor blocks and we'll just make we'll make a row of those. And normally I would use a nice type of thing here. I would not use these. I would use the, well, let's just go ahead and do this right. I'll do this right from the beginning. I would use the armored conveyors, because these attach on all sides and they have extra durability. And I'm going to go out to here, and then I'm going to turn and go up like that. There is a small grid block that is a weapon that fits perfectly on here, and that I believe is the assault turret, assault cannon, auto turret. We'll look it up. It is the autocannon turret. All the small grid turrets are 5x5x5, but this one has a small opening on the bottom, so we're going to put that on top of our rover. So that looks nice. It fits a little bit better. I could have put a Gatling one and it would have attached to the small connector on the side of this, but then it would have been right on top of those blocks, and I didn't want that. So we're going to put the autocannon turret up there. And while we're at it, we're going to make a little bit of a roll bar for the cockpit. So if I end up upside down, the cockpit is not what's taking damage. And I think this is a great place to use these type of blocks, because this right now, it's attached to this armor block, but it's not attached to the cockpit actually. So it's not going to transfer damage if I roll to the cockpit. And I'm going to make a shape like this. It's a little bit awkward. We might adjust that in the future. That's kind of like when you finish building your rover, all the functional parts of it, going back and painting and like switching blocks out. That's when I do that. I just get the idea figured out as I'm building it in the first place. We don't need to have a block in here. First of all, it will let us look up if we really want to. So we have kind of like, we still have visibility up there. And second of all, it's not really helping us. It's not helping us by blocking any damage. So it's just adding weight. These blocks are, these blast door blocks are extremely heavy. So you want to keep those low as well if you can. But we're going to have that to block damage from there. Maybe we should put thrusters on this. We have 2 of these batteries, which means we should be able to put enough thrusters on to lift the ship. The big batteries output about 4 megawatts, I think, and the atmospheric thrusters require 600 kilowatts. So small batteries aren't really feasible, in my mind, for powering thrusters. The big batteries are, though. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to add that. I wonder if this turret is just a little bit too close to our connector, because we do want this to actually be able to connect to a large grid. I think it's going to be far enough, because even though the hitbox says it's this big, I don't think the actual collision box is that big. But that might be a problem. If that's a problem, we just move this one forward. So we have a solution already in mind if we run into that problem in the future. So yeah, I think this is a big enough craft, and we are making it to be a highly durable scout ship. I think we should have thrusters. We should have minimum flight capabilities on this ship. Now, I think we're going to have quite a few thrusters facing down to lift this. The one downside of having heavy armor blocks is that it does make you a lot heavier for lifting with thrusters. So I guess that's worth keeping in mind, but it's not going to be enough to stop us, I don't think. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put thrusters on here, and we're going to do it just enough to fly. No more than that. Because we're not trying to make an agile ship for flying. We're just trying to make a rover that can fly if it absolutely has to. And I want to keep these low. I want to keep these as low as possible. So I am going to put them sticking a little bit out kind of the bottom. And I wonder if 8, I am still mirroring, so these should be on the other side as well. I wonder if 8 will be enough. I think it will be for the moment, but we still kind of have the skeleton of a ship, not a full ship. Now I'm going to go ahead at this point and I'm going to get rid of these blocks because it can sit on its wheels, and I can actually still kind of crouch walk underneath here because I have the big wheels and it's sitting nice and high off the ground. But we are going to also put in pistons, so let's turn these thrusters off. So this is how it's actually going to sit on the ground currently. Feels pretty good. Let's actually see if the thrusters can lift us. Oh yeah, so the thrusters can lift us. I don't know why we're falling back down after our inertial dampeners are on, so we shouldn't be falling. but we are for some reason. The game's buggy, what can I say? But that's enough for us to fly. So we're not going to add more downwards. We are going to add a few in the other directions, though. A very few. All right, so we're going to add... Yeah, we're going to add 2 in the forwards direction. We'll add 2 in the backwards direction. And then we'll add 1 to the left and 1 to the right. See how I'm still trying to place them as low as possible? So 1 left, 1 right. These 2 are the exception to that because actually I could place them underneath. I could place them underneath. I kind of don't want to though. And it's only 2 of them, so having those 2 up high is not the end of the world. And they are still, they're still between the front and the back wheels, so that's kind of what's important. I'm trying to keep this center of mass of our rover kind of right where the center wheel is, so that our distribution of weight across the wheels is also fairly even. If it was way back here, there would be a lot less weight on the front wheels, and when I hit a bump, the front would want to pop up. But if the weight's right in the middle, then it wants to pivot about that, and it will push down on the back wheel, and it won't pop the front up. So you want to kind of keep it in the middle, front and back as well. It's definitely valuable. All right, so now we can fly. And now that we can fly, we should immediately consider parachutes, because if you can fly, you can fall. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 3 parachute setup. Parachutes are a lot like legs. It's hard to balance a chair on 2 legs. It's easy to balance a chair on 3 legs. And if you want your rover to fall in a stable manner, where like the tip of it or the back of it or the side of it doesn't just land sideways, if you want it to land upright, you're going to want at least 3 parachutes. The gyroscopes will actually let you get away with just having 1 parachute sometimes, but you generally want, I like having at least 3. And you should definitely put your parachutes blocks above your center of mass, because if you put them below the center of mass, when they deploy, they're going to want to flip you upside down. So don't do that. Now I'm going to put parachutes, and you kind of want to balance them around your center of mass too. So my center of mass is still perfectly balanced left to right. So as long as these are balanced left to right, it doesn't really matter. But my center of mass is just about at this wheel thing, and I just put 2 right. I put 2 parachutes about 2 blocks behind it. So if I put 1 in front of it, I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks in front of it, and that will kind of even out the torque. And I'm going to actually put my parachute right here, I think. I guess that's acceptable. I might test the parachutes and end up moving this 1 block further forwards. And it also, I think, looks nicer there because it looks like it can deploy, but it doesn't have to be there. It's perfectly acceptable to have it back a little bit, and it will deploy through blocks. But we do have to change this to a T. All right, there we go. We'll change that to a T, and then we will put the parachute. All right, change that to a T, and then we will put a straight one in, and we'll put the parachute a little further forwards. This also isn't a bad idea, because if it lifts more in the front, I will land with the back wheels first and not my control block. Now I do have important blocks in the back, but I also have 2 wheels towards the back a little bit more, so landing with the back a little bit before the front is not the end of the world. And again, I can use the gyros to try and land as level as possible, which is pretty much always what you want to do. Alright, we have flight figured out. We have parachutes figured out. We have not done a remote control in combination with the camera. So we're going to go ahead and slap a camera right on the back. And then we are going to just slap a remote control. This is upside right, and this is currently facing towards me, so I'm just going to orientate the remote control the same way the camera is facing for simplicity of setting it up later. And we have no beacon or antenna either, so I'm going to go ahead and add those. Now, it doesn't really matter where these go at all. However, I like to center them because it's where your beacon or antenna signal is going to come from, and it always feels weird to me if it's not centered. I just always want them centered. So, I kind of want to stick them down here, but then at the same time, I kind of don't, because I want this to be a fairly strong part of the ship, and the heavy armor blocks are much stronger than a beacon or an antenna block. That said, gosh, it's a compromise between being centered and just being in an okay spot. It's completely okay that I'm burying my respawn point, because it will still respawn me. It's just going to respawn me off to the side. This is probably going to be completely buried once we're done with this ship, so that's completely okay. You know what? We will put the beacon and the antenna. We'll put them right here. We will flip the antenna around like that. Oh, we can't. Okay, well, we'll put the antenna like that. So we'll have our beacon antenna there. There's only going to be one on at a time, generally speaking, so it's going to look unbalanced, but if you ever have both of them on, then it looks balanced. And you know where to find them, so. Now let's go ahead and let's reinforce our wheel well area. Again, I'm going to use heavy armor blocks because there's not much reason not to. It's really low to the ground and it'll be good for stability. Let's add lifting pistons at this point, because I want to get underneath here, and now you see I have a problem where I can't actually crawl underneath and work underneath. So having lifting pistons will be super good. That will also allow me to drive underneath a station and then lift up to attach my connector to a station. So lifting pistons on this design will be very useful. And I like to make these symmetrical, and I also like to make them relatively high off the ground. I think this is the point that this is the lowest point I would put it at, and it's also kind of the highest point. If I put it any higher, it's not going to be very useful, and if I put it any lower, it's going to be bottoming out on the ground. So I really want to put them a little bit closer in, but I don't think it's the end of the world if I put them right there and say like right here. I think that's actually pretty good. I'll have to do some armor shaping around that to make it not look so terrible, but now I can go to my pistons and just extend them. And this is what I mean when I say lifting pistons. So now I can crouch and I can get right underneath my ship, right underneath my rover to work on it however I want. And now I can place these blocks because I can get to them. There we go, placed. And while I'm at it, I'm going to add just a little bit of shaping down here. We'll add that every now and then, just so it looks nice. There, and there. Giving it a nicer texture to the bottom. And those blocks don't cost much, so. Alright, now I can look at my center of mass again, make sure I'm doing a decent job of keeping a low triangle, a flat triangle. I can see the tires. I can't really see the ship one. Oh, there it is. So the ship one's still pretty much centered on that block, that opening. So I still have a very squat triangle, which is what I'm going for. Now, I think I have all the blocks I want to have other than armor. Oh, I don't have decoy blocks. Decoy blocks are something I absolutely should add, and I think a great place to add them would probably be right about here. because that's going to be it's going to be 3 blocks away from anything vital, but it's not going to be sticking out too much. So I'm going to go ahead and add decoy blocks. I always recommend having at least 2. You can go for 4 if you want, if you think there's going to be a lot of lightning where you are. If I was going for 4, I would probably do them like that. You know what, let's just do it. And I'm going to put them on not heavy armor, but light armor. Because, again, these are going to be kind of high up. You want them to be above other blocks, because if a lightning tries to hit them and they're underneath other blocks, the lightning will still hit those other blocks, because it'll hit the first thing as it's on its path to the block it wants to hit. So you want them to be away from other blocks that might get hit instead of them. These might actually be an issue for the turret. The turret might get hit instead of them, but I don't think so. So we're going to go with that for now. If in using this rover a ton in the future you find out, the turret gets hit all the time, then you move it. But for now, this is a good enough spot for our decoy blocks. Doesn't matter what orientation they have, it's just all about looks. So we've got a whole bunch of decoy blocks, they're kind of just sticking out. And maybe we can make things look a little bit nicer, but at this point we're just kind of nitpicking, and we're doing fashion design, because the functional parts of our ship are completely done. Our rover is more or less done. Now what I would do is I would do a whole lot of testing. Oh, you know what? We forgot the thing I always forget. We forgot lights. So we're going to add some headlights to this. We'll just use the vanilla lights because I don't think they look great, but they look great as headlights. They don't look great as taillights. And I like immersion. So we're going to have headlights and taillights. And I also like to place my headlights in front of my cockpit, because if you place them behind the cockpit too far, you get a whole bunch of glare in your cockpit and it makes it really hard to see. So if you can place them at least even with the front of your cockpit or the front of your control seat or whatever, that's great. If you can place them in front of it, even better. And another thing I like to do, just for immersion's sake, is I make the tail lights red, and I make them only shine half as far as your forward lights. And we don't really need this, so I'm going to go ahead, just put a little ramp block there to make it look a little nicer. I think it looks nicer. Maybe it doesn't. And we'll also add something very similar here, but we are going to do maybe something like this instead. I would do the more angled blocks normally. You know what? Let's just go like that. That's okay. It's actually okay for this setup. Alright. I mean, that's kind of ugly, actually. Maybe that's not okay. I don't know. Something you putz with. The looks of the thing you can putz with for sure. But we've got pretty much a functioning thing. Let's take it for a test run on the track. I wasn't going to do this. I was going to save this for another video, but I'll give you a good sense of how durable these rovers can actually be. And we'll find out really quick if we missed anything. So let's make it nighttime, just to make it as awkward as potentially possible. Alright, it's nighttime. Jump in this. We will turn off our center of mass to get rid of all that nonsense. Let's just turn off all the beacons and whatnot. Well, we'll just push H. We can get rid of that. You can see we can still corner fairly well. Now, oh, I have my park for a second. We do not want the thrusters on. We actually want to just drive this car like a car. If you're going to use parking brake, there is one more thing I recommend you do, and that is go to any connector you have and tell it not to be used for parking. So yeah, go to all of your connectors, your landing gears, your magnetic plates, go through all of them in your menu and make sure they are not set to be used for parking. There is another way to park without using the parking brake, and a lot of people recommend doing this just so you don't accidentally parking brake and detach all your connectors and landing gears and all that. And that is, you go to your G menu, you grab your cockpit or control block, and instead of doing park on off, you put a handbrake on off, and that'll just be on your hotbar now. So instead of using parking brake, I can just tap on my hotbar, handbrake on, handbrake off, and it parks my Rover by just forcing the handbrake. That's a really good option. I'm not certain now though if, say I attached this Rover to another Rover or a station or a ship or something like that, and I hit P accidentally or on purpose while controlling that vehicle, will I unparking brake all the stuff on this one too? I'm not sure. That's something that needs testing. So regardless of whether or not I'm going to use the handbrake trick, I always go through to everything that I don't want to accidentally parking brake detach, and I set it to not be used for parking brake. Definitely worth doing. I think that aside, we should let's take this for a run. I'm gonna do it first person because I really like driving in first person. I think it's super immersive. Maybe I should do it third person. We'll do a lap in first person, and then we'll do a lap in the other direction in third person, so you can see how much air we're actually getting. It'll be pretty ridiculous, I think. So let's jump into this. And I'm going to take it pretty quick. You know what? Whoa. We're going to parking brake first. Something you should always do before testing your vehicle is blueprint it. So Control B. I think I was aiming at the tire, not that it matters, but okay. Now we got it blueprinted. So if you do crash and burn, you at least have a blueprint. That is something we've forgotten. Something that we should definitely add is the repair blueprint, the repair projector. Because if we do crash, then we can easily fix that. And you know what? We're gonna drive in third person because it'll be a better example of how well you can control these vehicles. And we're just going through all these arches. And see, when I'm in the air, I have a lot of control over my vehicle. I can tilt up and down, I can go left and right. And if I start rolling like that, because I have gyroscopes, I can fix my roll and not crash and burn. So, gyroscopes are pretty much a must in my mind for that reason. And we went with the big wheels, so we've got a lot of clearance, and we've got a lot going for us. They're extremely durable. You can kind of just go off crazy jumps with this and be pretty safe. You just always, when you're coming up on a surface, try to land it with as many wheels as possible. Come off this jump, I'm going to try and land as flat as possible. Now, I can just run into these trees. I got a front bumper. It's not going to hurt me at all. Bounce right off the tree, and my Rover's completely fine. Just punt that tree out of here. Don't need it. It kind of looks like we're going slow, but if I jump in first person, this is first person, 1x speed. It's really jumpy right now. Let me just reload the game real quick, and we'll get back to this because I think we're having some rendering jumpiness. We're back. It's a little less jumpy, and I just realized I was setting up the parachutes, and I realized I didn't actually mirror across here, so we're gonna get that one fixed. There's supposed to be a parachute right here. Excellent. Now let's get those on the hotbar where they should be. So now we've got the parachutes on the hotbar, we've got thrusters on the hotbar. I do feel a little jittery. I think we could turn down our suspension so that we have a little bit of a smoother ride. But I kind of like it the way it is. We're going to go off quite a bit of a jump here. And now this is the point where if you really wanted to, you could open your parachutes. And because I'm not spinning this at all, we're just going to land however the parachutes make us land. And that's pretty comfortable landing. Now, we'll just fly back up because we can, right? We'll close those parachutes. They're being annoying. Right. So, say I came off that jump and I didn't want to open the parachutes. I could just toggle my thrusters on and kind of just like glide across and come down. Oh. See, we barely are able to fly, but we are able to fly. So we can get back up here. Say this was the only way back up on the ridge, we could at least do that. Now, because we built a Rover with big wheels that is essentially a monster truck, we can take this jump and we don't have to parachute, we don't have to do anything. We can just land off this jump. It doesn't matter. We are plenty durable. Look, we can even hit it janky, and we're coming down, land with as many wheels as possible. Okay. I did bottom out, which is surprising to me, but let's look at our damage. Alright, what bottomed out? Okay, we bottomed out here and we lost the gyroscope. This is why you don't build all the gyroscopes in one place. This gyroscope, it bottomed out a little bit, but it didn't blow up. And these gyroscopes are fine. So we took a little bit of damage. If we had a repair projector, we could come down here and we could just weld it all right back up and it would be fine. The other thing we should do is, now that we know coming off a jump like that we might bottom out, we can crank up the suspension strength on our tires. Oh, something I also love to do, turn your power on your tires all the way up to 100%. There's little reason not to do that. And the strength, we could probably go to 8%. And you want to set your height offset to maximum. All those things combined, well, the strength and the height offset are probably why we bottomed out. My Rovers are all pretty well tuned to strength and height offset settings. The other thing is we might as well make this a little bit faster. I kind of like going faster. So we go a little bit faster and all that's good. Let's fly back up there and let's just jump again. Yeah, sure, we lost some parts, but we're fairly durable, so it's not the end of the world. And we'll just try it again. This is why you do a bunch of testing. You find your weak points on your Rover. And I found out that, hey, I bottom out. Oh. Well, that was not ideal for a landing, but we're also kind of just fine. So, yeah, just what is going on? Oh yeah, I tried to land and my pistons were still out. No wonder I had no control. I didn't land on my wheels. Well, oh well. We're still completely fine, even when you screw up. If you have a durable Rover, you're just fine every time. All right, we're gonna get full speed and we're gonna hit this jump at full speed. And I'm cornering on level ground at 40 something meters per second. And I'm tilting a little bit, so something I will take note of in the future. I might not want to do that. All right, we'll hit this. We bounce kind of high. Let's get nice and level for our landing. All right, so now our wheel suspension is set up properly because we didn't bottom out. We just did a giant bounce when we landed. And if we land with all our wheels again, we're just going to bounce again, and we're going to be completely fine. Now, if you want to stop bouncing sooner, you can hold your spacebar. You can brake while you're landing, and it will kind of reduce the bouncing effect you have with the Rovers. Yeah, there was actually no reason. We didn't actually have to bottom out that first time. We just didn't have our suspension set up properly. Strengthen your suspension just a little bit, and you'll be fine. And we'll keep driving. taking this pretty fast as I think we can, which is pretty dang fast. We're taking this all at 45 to 50 meters per second. We're going to hit this and we're going to get a pretty good jump, I think. Ooh. So this is what you want to be able to do with your rover. You want to just be able to drive and not really worry about what's in front of you. You just want to go full speed. Now, this is a course, and I know this course, so I know what's ahead of me, but it's kind of designed to simulate not knowing what's ahead of you, so it makes you do a lot of turns, a lot of jumps. Yeah, like this. It's kind of just a blind jump. And this is what I would be doing, realistically, even in survival. This is what I would be doing with this rover. It's designed to be a scout rover. It's designed to be able to handle this kind of abuse. Yeah, I went over it, and oh, it turns out it was a giant jump. Well, I'm just going to land level and bounce, and I'm fine. We'll come down in this hole, hit a tree, no big deal. We just send the tree flying, and we keep moving. It's excellent. Go back into this so you can kind of see a little bit better. First person makes things very dark, and that's why you want the headlights. If you don't have the headlights and you're driving in first person, let's flip those off. You really can't see what's in front of you that well. Not when you're going this fast. And this is how fast I like to go. I want to go at least this fast. The headlights help tons. So we're going to hit a jump, and we have gyroscopes, so we can just do front flips. And as long as we land level, it's no big deal. And I even lost a gyroscope, and I'm actually not sure if one of them is working, so I might be down to 2 gyroscopes, and we're perfectly fine. This is a bit of terrain that was drilled out, so it's really bumpy and inconvenient, but we can go up that too. We're perfectly fine. We got the monster truck thing going, and we'll be just fine. Drop on into this valley. Full speed, jiggle around a bit, take a turn on a slope that is tilted with the turn, and you end up rolling if you don't control it. Just like that. Now, I have gyroscopes, so I can just flip my ship back up. It's a little easier in first person. Now, I lost a ton of my ship. So, see how this area was armored on top, and this area survived? I might want to extend armor across a lot more of my ship so that when I roll, I don't lose all of my functional blocks like I just did. That is not what you want to have happen when you roll, because eventually you are going to roll like that. Now, that roll was completely avoidable if I had just used my gyroscopes to keep myself spinning to the left as I took that turn. It's a little difficult to do that because spin to the left and turn to the left are usually the same finger, but you can do if you get used to driving that kind of stuff. Now, I did lose a ton of blocks, but because I have contiguous armor blocks across the bottom, I have this continuous row. I didn't lose any of my heavy armor blocks. I still have my wheels. My gyroscopes survived down there, and my ship is still driving. Like, if I wasn't in third person, I wouldn't even know that I had lost most of my rover. My rover acts exactly the same. It still works great. It does feel a little bit lighter in the back, honestly. The back is popping up a little bit more. A couple more jumps, and then up on top of that hill over there, you can see that's where we started. So we'll be back around, and we can spawn in a new version of the rover. Cut that a little close. We're fine. And then make the changes that we were talking about. And then what I would do is I'd go through, I'd make the changes, and then I would test. Every time you make changes, you test. Don't make too many changes between testing, because then you don't know if suddenly it's not working, you don't know why it's not working. So make one major change and then test your rover. Make one major change, test your rover. It's just best practice when it comes to that. All right, let's do a celebratory backflip on our way in. Woo! And right up the ramp. Look at that. Smooth. So yeah, I guess I'm just gonna stop here. You pretty much have all of my input for making rovers. Hopefully that helps you make rovers too, and helps you make more durable ones that can do more. This one, definitely, a repair projector would be super useful. Then I could fix all the things that I just broke. Putting a little bit more armor around the tops and sides, even if it is just light armor, you're keeping it from exploding when you roll, so that's good. And there was one other thing. What was it? I guess the last thing was just testing your suspensions, making sure that they are the right strength to keep you from bottoming out when you take large jumps. Alright, I think that's going to be it for this video. I'm going to upload this world onto the Steam Workshop, and I will upload this rover, and I actually have a small rover that I built before that works really great on this track, and it's another good example of a much simpler rover than the one we just built. But it's a good rover, and it's a simple rover, so if you want another example of what you can build and a good way to build things, you'll have that. The tutorial board will obviously be uploaded with this world, but I'm going to blueprint. This is all one grid, the small grid. I'm going to blueprint the tutorial board, and I will upload that to the Steam Workshop as well if you just want to paste it into a world you already have for testing. So you can get all the information I went over for the most part and have it in your own world. So hopefully you enjoy that, and I will see you in the next one.